Howdy, y'all. Movie Makal here. Gonna do the Blu-ray video part two. Part one, what the hell was that? Where's part one? Part one was a few years ago, and it was Hoops and White Fang. Both were DVDs and not Blu-rays. White Fang I don't own anymore. I gave it back to my brother as a Christmas gift. And Hoops, now that I actually have Blu-rays, Hoops disqualified. I'd give it past to White Fang for the quality of the DVD, but because it's the complete series of White Fang, but you know, without it, it's unfortunate. My brother has it now. Maybe he'll regift it to me one Christmas. For Blu-rays, I typically only go for my favorite movies. Like I have a nice collection building up. It's not a huge one. It's not massive. And in like a year or two, I'd like to do a follow-up, a part three to when it's a even bigger collection. Um, because like yeah, right now it's like probably like what 20. There's not a lot. But it's been fun collecting them, and I'm only going for like my absolute favorite movies. Like I'm going for my eights, my nines, my tens, just movies that I absolutely love. There's a couple of odd ones in here just because they were either a gift or there's a funny story behind them. But it's mainly exclusively movies that I genuinely love. No irony there. I consider them to be peak cinema. And again, in no ironic sense at all. So first off, we got Shark Tale, which, I didn't do a Shark Tale video this year, but if I do one next year, that could actually be what this year was. Like, this year was the year there was no Shark Tale video, and that's the joke. Where next year there is one. If there's no video next year, it's over forever. At that point, I repeated myself, by not doing one. And it's over for good. Now, maybe if Shark Tale wasn't such a horrible piece of shit, I would have made a Shark Tale video this year, but unfortunately, it is a horrible piece of shit. So that's where I stand on the movie this year. I might think it's a masterpiece again next year. I don't know, hard to say. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Love this movie. It reminds me of a game series I like more, even though this came out way before it. Of the Sigmund Corp series, like To the Moon and Finding Paradise. There's a lot of similar themes of just going through your memories and looking at like a past loved one, seeing where like things in your life went wrong, but also remembering the good times. It's a movie that shows like even if something ends on a negative note, a lot of your memories, a lot of those memories can still be very precious, even though it's like reflecting on something that's over. I think it's a beautiful movie. I think it's the best I've ever seen Jim Carrey in. It's almost like a perfect 10. I do think there's like a scene or two that's a little too silly. Like Jim Carrey is like really tame in this movie, but there is like a scene or two where he's like really wacky, and I like wacky Jim Carrey. But I wish he could just hold back a little bit, and he mainly does in this movie. I think it's wonderful. It's a Charlie Kaufman script, which I mean I love every single thing that guy has written. Speaking of which, adaptation, another movie, um, not directed by good old Charlie Kaufman, but it was written by him, and it was directed by Spike Jonze. Love this movie. If you ask me what my favorite movie is, it's very hard for me to answer that, because it changes. It also depends on my mood. There's three movies in this collection right now where I would say, like, if you asked me what my favorite movie was and I had to give you an answer, like, I would just name one of those three movies. This is one of them. It's actually my friend Matt's favorite movie too, and he's one of the people who like really talked me into watching it. I would have watched it regardless eventually because I've heard about it for years, but yeah, like he told me about it like along with many other people, and it became one of my favorites too. It's a very meta film. It's meta before meta got a little obnoxious though, and I also think it's a lot more clever with how it's meta. It's basically just a movie about making this movie. Um, which is something you can make fun of. I think Community had a really funny episode making fun of adaptation. But there's no denying how well done it's here. It's really funny. It's really interesting. It's very personal to the writer Charlie Kaufman. Nicolas Cage like knocks it out of the park. It's wonderful. It's a 10 out of 10. It's one of the best movies I've ever seen. Magnolia, Paul Thomas Anderson. I might have another one of his movies here. Honest to God, my favorite movies from him are Boogie Nights and Punch Drunk Love, and I don't own those. I might have Boogie Nights. I don't know if it's a DVD or a Blu-ray. It's not in this pile. It's somewhere else. But this one's a 3 hour long movie, and I'd probably rank it at number three for Paul Thomas Anderson films. It's a little bit less focused. Like there's a lot of different stories going on, and they don't always like necessarily connect, although that's not really the point. A lot of them do connect. A lot of them do connect to each other, but there are some that like completely stay on their own. Um, it's definitely not a story where every single event is linked, but a lot of them are. But it's very interesting. It's a very interesting movie, and despite its 3 hour runtime and its weird pacing, it manages to stay interesting the entire time. And while I wouldn't say this is like even in my top 10 favorite movies, again, not even in my not even my favorite Paul Thomas Anderson film, I think it has the best opening to a film I've ever seen in my life. I think the first 10 minutes of this movie, which have almost nothing to do with the rest of the movie, is so fucking interesting. It's so well done. It's so clever. And I loved it. I loved it so much. It's like the rest of the movie is good too, but it's a movie where I think it peaks in the opening scene. But again, the rest of it's more than worth watching. It's just in terms of an opening, holy cow, I think this one nailed it. Like it's great opening scene. Synecdoche, New York. Became interested in this movie because I became a big fan of YMS a few years back, and he had this big video analysis on this movie that's still like ongoing. Because he has it like this movie is about the passage of time, amongst many other things. Like death is probably the main theme, but the passage of time is a high thing of it. And YMS kind of has this setup where he's talking about the movie very slowly throughout time. So like I think the last part was like part five or part six, and it took him like 3 or 4 years to get to part six, and now it's been like 3 or 4 years since part six, and we're still or part I think part six is next, and we're waiting on part six. So he's kind of like at first it was taking a while, but now he's like actually like making it part of the theme of the analysis, and I love that. Um, and yeah, the movie is great. Like I had to check it out because I wanted to watch those videos because I was just like watching everything he's made. I again big YMS fan. And yeah, this is wonderful. It's a very disturbing movie, in the sense that it made me think about things I didn't necessarily want to think about. I connected with a character that I didn't want to connect with, and I came to terms with a lot of things about myself through it. And that may make it sound incredible, and it is, but it fucked with me for a few weeks. I was like in a state where I was worried about my health. I was getting CAT scans for something, which turned out to be nothing, but I was not in a good headspace, and I decided to watch this of all fucking things. It's a movie where the main character is constantly obsessed with like what he's got, like if he's has an illness, if he's dying. He's just constantly reflecting on death, so thinking about death so much that he's not even able to enjoy his life, and that was so much who I was at that time. And it just, it didn't even put me at ease. It made me more worried about these things. It gave me more to be stressed about. But when I really like put everything into perspective and thought about it, I think this movie helped me out at the end of it. Charlie Kaufman has made it very clear that he doesn't make these movies to upset people, or to make you, feel sad or afraid. It's more so just to, be honest. It's to paint a very honest picture of how he views the world, how he views life. And I don't think it's going to be for everyone. I think there's going to be people who find it too depressing or don't really connect with the characters. But it's one that did a lot for me. It's a very special movie for me to me. And it's in my top 10. I don't know. I'm not going to call it my favorite just because I do think there's more fun movies out there. I think there's movies that mix different things I like better than Synecdoche, New York. But it's a special one. It's a very special one. This one is one of the ones I would name as my favorite. Mary and Max, favorite animated movie, hands down. But also just a movie that, like, if someone says, "What's your favorite movie?" It's going to be adaptation, this, or we'll get to it soon. Just love it. It's a really great mix of humor and darkness. I think it's taken on a lot of different things. Like there's a lot it wants to talk about, but it never feels like any of it's forced. Every single thing they address comes up very naturally. And I love it. I absolutely love it. I've talked about it so many times. We did a duck cast on it. It's one of the first episodes of Derailed. I talked about it again with Olivia when she was on Derailed and we did the stop motion episode. I talk about it on live streams. I talk about it in just videos unprompted. It's one of my favorite movies. I've talked about this film to death. So I'll leave it at that. Great movie. Great fucking movie. Favorite animated movie of all time, hands down. The Super Mario Brothers, the good one, not the I liked the Illumination one just fine. It was a good time. It was actually a really good time. I was surprised. But Chris made a video. My friend Chris made a video talking about how there was a Blu-ray for this, and I was like, "There's a fucking Blu-ray for the Super Mario Brothers." Like there was a huge point in time where I feel like no one even knew this existed. Now I think it's a bit more common knowledge that this was a thing. But I remember when I was a kid and I found it, I was like, this isn't real. This is fan made. This is something, because I was like, I was like a kid on Newgrounds and YouTube when people were doing like parody Mario stuff. And I just thought this was like a fucking photoshopped picture someone did. A pretty well done one, to be honest. But or a drawing that they did. And no, it's fucking real. And it's one of the most bizarre movies ever made. It's one of my favorite bad movies. It's so fucking stupid. I don't even like get mad at it for being a bad, like, adaptation of Mario, because at the time there was fucking nothing to go off of. Watch Chris's video. She does a good job going into it. Smash Pack. Check it out. But I love this movie. I hate it and I love it at the same time. Fuck. It is so bad it's good, for sure. Ending drags on a bit. I find it very funny and interesting, but the ending drags on a bit. I'm ready for it to be over by the time it's over. I do like some of the set pieces. Bob Hoskins was great casting choice for Mario. Like that's one that would work today. That's one that would work even today. And then Dennis Hopper's funny in it. Sometimes it feels intentional, sometimes it feels unintentional. But yeah, good. I mean, bad but good. Here's a one that I've seen very recently, Ed Wood. Matt and me are doing a Hall of Victories episode on this, not on this movie, but the movie Glen or Glenda, which they make within the film. I mean, it's even what's kind of being reflected here on the cover a bit. I talked about it a lot on not only the Hall of Victories episode where we talked about Glen or Glenda versus Ben and Arthur, which isn't going to be out by the time I upload this, but it's coming pretty... No, it is! Today it goes out. Okay, perfect timing. And then there's going to be an Out of the Ring episode on Matt's second channel on Ed Wood specifically. So I've talked about this movie a lot with Matt and Mitzi. Check it out if you want to hear more of my thoughts. I never saw it before. I just saw it like 2 weeks ago for recording the podcast, and it became one of my favorite movies immediately. 10 out of 10. Beautiful film. Dear Zachary, a letter to a son about his father. I always get mixed on that last part. Saddest movie ever made. I don't think you could talk me out of that. I think I'm going to stand by that no matter what. Saddest movie ever made. Favorite documentary ever made. It's a movie, like... I feel like if you watch this, you have to accept that not only are you going to be sad, you're going to be crying. Like, I've gotten teary-eyed from many movies, but, like, actually fucking crying, like, actually fucking bawling my eyes out, this is the only one that's ever done that to me. Like, I was fucking sobbing watching this shit. And it being a documentary and being, like, a very real, nothing fictional in this, it got to me. And this Blu-ray has expanded scenes from the film, and it also includes, like, an epilogue story for stuff that has happened after the documentary came out. So I gotta check it out. This one's, like, a lot of these are still in the plastic. A lot of these are new. I think I'm gonna start enjoying some of these today, actually. I got off of work. I'm gonna check out some movies, check out some bonus features. This one, I need to prepare myself because it's going to make me feel like shit for the rest of the day. It's a great documentary. I'd recommend it, but be aware of what you're getting yourself into because it's a harsh one. But it's beautiful too. As sad as it is, there is like a light at the end of the tunnel when it really comes down to it. It is a movie that has something to say. It is a movie that needs to address something that is and was a very serious issue in our legal system, for sure. It's a very important movie, I feel. I think it's a movie that it's not just like, oh, watch it because you're going to get a strong reaction from it. It's, it is going to get a strong reaction from you, but I also think it's an important movie. I think it is like, it's not just like shock, it's very meaningful, and it's a 10 out of 10. It's the best documentary I've ever seen. Unbreakable, one of my, probably also my top. I love this movie. If you want to call it a comic book movie, it's my second favorite comic book movie. It almost feels like a satire of comic book movies, but a very dramatic satire. Like, it's not like comedy, but it's like maybe parody isn't the right word. Satire is not the right word. It's a play on comic book, like, mythology, like just it's kind of comparing that to like old Greek mythology. It's and it's very interesting. It's Shyamalan's best movie by far. I mean, not by far. Sixth Sense is pretty close. In fact, Sixth Sense and Unbreakable, I kind of go back and forth on. But outside of those two, it's by far those are the best two. Um, Great score, one of my favorite scores of all time. Great performances from Bruce Willis and Samuel Jackson. Um, I'm going to talk about the sequel soon because there's technically two sequels to this movie, and I own one of them on Blu-ray. But Unbreakable, great movie. Into the Spider-Verse, favorite comic book movie by far. And I saw the sequel yesterday, and I will say the sequel did not disappoint. And in fact, it was so good that I knew, you know what, Spider-Verse is no longer my favorite comic book movie. My favorite comic book movie is the Spider-Verse series because I think that Into the Spider-Verse is a perfect first movie for the series, and Across the Spider-Verse was a perfect follow-up. I think both did exactly what they needed to do. I think it's like groundbreaking for what it did for animation. It's so good, and it reached such an audience that I don't think I could say a single thing or a single original thing about this. I'm going to be doing a podcast with my friend Olivia over on Smash Pack soon with a couple other friends. And when we get to that, maybe I can say some original things about Across the Spider-Verse before they become super unoriginal things to say. Because, you know, nobody's really blind to this. Like, everybody who gives it a chance seems to love this. They seem to love this. They seem to love the sequel, and I can completely see why. It's well written. It's funny. It has the like again. It has animation that changed the standard. It's probably responsible for a lot of stuff like Mitchell's versus the Machines. Not a movie I love. It's a good movie. But I'm not going to get a Blu-ray of it. But the animation style is wonderful, and that's like a follow-up, Sony's movie after this, like their next big movie after this one. I think it probably did affect Puss in Boots to a lot, which that's a great thing because that movie did do its own thing with the style, but you can definitely see like, okay, this is becoming more of like an industry standard now to try out these new and unique things with the animation. There's a Turtles movie coming out that I think that this movie changed a lot. I think it changed a lot of like how people are going to look at what a comic book movie can be and how what an animated movie can be, and I appreciate the hell of it for this. I think it's a very important movie, and it's not just the animation. I think the writing is fantastic in both movies. Like, there's a lot. I think Miles Morales is my favorite Spider-Man, and I don't read comic books. I can't like speak for the comics, but when it comes to the movies, I really do think Miles is my favorite. South Park, bigger, longer, uncut. I am a South Park fan. I think a lot of the episodes can be hit or miss. A lot of episodes with some poorly that didn't date so well. Some that dated super well, and I actually think the movie is like came out in 1999, and yeah, I think it's like it aged really well. I don't think that there's a single thing in this movie that feels out of place. The music in it is really good because it's a musical, which was funny. The writing is better than anything from the first three seasons that came from before it, and then the rest of the show was better written because the first three seasons of South Park aren't. Season three has some good episodes, but season one and two really aren't good. It was something different. I get why it was a hit back then, but this movie like really changed what the show could be. And I think even if you do not like the show, even if like the show just has episodes that rub you the wrong way, I'm not going to blame anyone for that. I absolutely understand why people aren't a fan of the show. I think the movie might still be worth checking out. If you like the Book of Mormon, consider checking this one out because I think it's Trey Parker and Matt Stone at their best, just like Book of Mormon is. Okay. This one is 20 million miles to Earth, and it came from beneath the sea. I had to look at it because I don't remember. I didn't remember what they were. When I went to visit Matt in Texas, he was giving away, like, he was going to get ready to sell a bunch of DVDs and Blu-rays to a store that he goes to that sells a bunch of those. And he said if there was anything I was interested in, I could take it. And I took this just because it looked funny. I haven't watched either of them yet. I'd like to. They look I almost wonder if like either of these could be Hollow Victory's potential, or if because they're old enough, it's considered charming for the time. I don't know a lot about these two, but they seem interesting to me, so I'd like to I'd like to check them out eventually. Pig. It's in a sleeve, just like Adaptation. You got the DVD, you got this nice little sleeve for it. I'm always mixed because I like these sleeves. I like how they make it's very nice presentation, but it also makes it inconsistent in the stack, which I don't know. Do I like that? Um, Pig is a movie that I absolutely love, and almost everyone that I've shown it to or talked about it with has found it incredibly boring. The only person I can think of that I showed it to, I didn't even show it to them, they just watched it, was my dad. He also really liked it. Very slow paced. It's a movie where, to a lot of people, it feels like not a lot is happening. To me, it is a perfect movie summarizing grief. It's doing it very subtly. It's not like over explaining anything. Um, it's just you're seeing a man who's pretty broken and trying to save the one good thing he has left in his life. And I think with that lens, maybe a rewatch could help some people who didn't like it. But if it's not for you, it's not for you. But I absolutely loved it. I think it was one of like the best movies I saw from the year it came out, which was it was just 2021. I just love it. I absolutely love it. The song that they chose for the ending credits, I don't know if that was a song made for the movie or it's just a song that existed before it, but beautiful song. It's on my playlist. I listen to it all the time. There's scenes at the ending of this movie that I just find devastating. Like they've made me feel things. They bring back feelings of like huge grief from learning, you know, experience in the death of a family member, experience in some other type of loss, learning something that you don't want to learn. There's just this horrible feeling you get in your gut, and this movie recreated that feeling. Which you might be asking, well, why the fuck do you want to do that to yourself? And what else are you watching movies for? Escapism is a good reason to watch movies, but I mean, experience and like making a connection with the director, making a connection with the people in the film, and just experiencing these things, I think is a very important thing with film. And Pig got to me. I appreciate the hell out of Pig. Um, Get Out, great movie. I've only seen it once. This was one that I actually got when I went to that Blu-ray place with Matt. I love this movie, and I haven't seen Jordan Peele's other films yet. I haven't seen Us. I'm more interested in Nope than Us, but I will probably check out Us too. But yeah, it's fantastic. I talked about it a couple of times on this channel. I think I probably talked about it on Duckcast too. No, not. I may have mentioned it on Duckcast. I don't think I actually talked. Yeah, I talked about it in our like the first Oscars video because it was a nomination the first year we did it. Um, Amazing cinematography, amazing first film. Like the fact that this was Jordan Peele's first movie, like this seems like the kind of thing that someone might make like really late into their career after years of experience. But this was the first one he did, and I think it's like I gave it a 9 when I watched it. It's super well shot. It's genuinely creepy. It's genuinely unsettling. Great characters. Yeah, great movie. Check it out. I mean, a lot of people already have, but yeah. Here's another one of my top 3 favorites. We got Whiplash. Just such a fun and stressful experience. Just genuinely such a hard thing to sit through at times, but it manages to be funny. It manages to be interesting. Everything with just Neiman and what's the character's name? I'm Speckler in the classroom is really stressful, but also entertaining to watch. It's fascinating to watch. But it still manages to change things up enough for the final act of the movie, to where it stays interesting. Again, like just those classroom scenes are great on their own, but it's a movie that manages to keep building on itself. It doesn't stay too comfortable in one place. It is able to expand and do something different, and it has like just one of the most amazing climaxes to a movie ever made. Split. This one is not one of my favorite movies. I just kind of bought it after it came out because I wanted to show it to people. Um, and it's been collecting dust ever since. I do like this movie. It's a kind of a follow-up to Unbreakable many years later, and it's great. Not amazing, not Unbreakable or Sixth Sense good, but it's pretty good. And it has a twist ending at the end. That kind of reveals things about itself if you put it into perspective and you think about them. That glass later repurposes and treats like a new twist. And I talk about that in my Glass video. I do not like that movie. I gave it a 6 in that video. It has definitely gone down. Unbreakable, great movie. Split, a surprisingly great movie from Shyamalan all these years later. Glass, fuck off. This one was a gift. It's a double feature. The Outlaw, Jose Wales, I don't know, and Unforgiven. I've only seen Unforgiven. I don't really like that movie too much, but I appreciate it. Very well shot, very well performed. It's kind of like an anti-spaghetti western. It's like taking a lot of what, a lot of like what what Clint I can't talk. What Clint Eastwood has done in his movies before, but takes a more serious approach to it, takes a more realistic approach. It doesn't really glorify it in any way, and I think that makes it stand out. Oh, Nobody. Another gift, not a movie that I would have purchased myself, but it's fun. It's just John Wick with Bob Odenkirk in it. Changes up the story enough to keep it keep it going. But yeah, I enjoyed it. It's a fun movie. I don't know if I'd ever see it again. It's kind of funny to see him in that after watching Better Call Saul, though. Another double feature. This one's a gift that I, or maybe I even bought this. I got this in high school. This one's old. Green Mile and Forrest Gump. Green Mile was my favorite movie growing up. It was a really good drama. It was one that I hadn't seen anything quite like it when I was a kid. Nowadays, it's not going to be in like the top 10 or top 20 or anything like that, but I still think it's really good. I think like it has solid cinematography, good score, great performances. It's an interesting story. Um, a little cliche in some areas, but I still appreciate it. Forrest Gump. I've heard people turn on this film nowadays. I don't know what the general consensus on Forrest Gump is anymore. I know people used to love it, and I assume enough people still like it. I did enjoy it, but they played it way too many times in school, and it's just one of those movies I'm still tired of. Because I watched it on my own independently and loved it. Then I watched it a few more times when it was on TV growing up, and I still really liked it. And then in school, it was like every year there was some history teacher or whatever who had to put it on for the class, and it's like Elf. Around Christmas every year at like elementary school, they play Elf nonstop, and it's just movies that I can't watch anymore because they played them too much. This is unironically probably my most valuable Blu-ray. Shrek Retold. It is not something that I believe you can purchase at the moment. I got this as a patron of 3GI. They used to hand out awards to the $10 patrons every once in a while. That tier no longer exists, so you can't get stuff like this, at least for now. Um, but I'd still recommend checking their stuff out. It's how I got into Shrek 2 Retold, so hey. Because I'm in the sequel for this movie that's not out yet, unless they cut me out, which I hope they don't do. They have like the nice like own little like Blu-ray logo. They even made like their own barcode on the top. I love how like just like handmade everything is. With these guys, like I love their like paper cutout style for a lot of the stuff they do, especially for like credits and whatnot. It's a great movie. I love this movie. It's just such a charming experience. It jumps from like really high quality animation to someone walking on all fours pretending to be Donkey in like a shitty video, but the combination of it, the variety of it, like really keeps it interesting the whole time. And it's also just a very well edited movie. It's all put together very well. A lot to appreciate with it. Enter the Void. This is a disturbing film. Um, Watch it if you're okay with being uncomfortable afterwards. But it's very interesting. There's nothing else like it visually and story wise. Like it's one of a kind. I'll give a little bit of a summary about it. It's a movie about someone who dies, and they kind of like float over the city they live in and see how the people in their life are being affected by it. If that sounds interesting to you, I'd say check it out. It's very harsh. It's very creepy. It's disturbing, but it's one of a kind. There's so much. I love the lighting of this movie. I love the look of this movie. It's a very special one. This one has the full length director's cut on it, which, oh my god, the movie's already really long as it is. And patience my only thing with this movie, where there's like shots that they focus on for a really long time. They'll have really slow zoom in and pan in shots where not a lot's happening. So I can't imagine what the director's cut is like. I mean, I'm surprised to hear that the director didn't just get to do whatever the hell he wants with some of those shots in there. Like if someone was making him, what did he want to do before that? Um, and finally, Everything Everywhere All at Once. Probably the most monumental movie of last year. I think it's like watching, a classic form before your eyes. I think a lot of times when you're in the moment, you don't actually see it coming. You don't know what's going to be really popular 20 years from now, what's going to be like, what movies people are going to think about for that era. And I think this is the one people are going to think for the 2020s. I think this is going to be like a major one. It's funny. It's well written. The dramatic side works. The performances are good. It's a comeback movie for a lot of the actors. It's also a movie that gave a lot of these actors acknowledgement. First time nominees for a lot of them at the Oscars. And yeah, a very special, unique movie that got, it's a rare case of a movie getting all the like attention it deserves. Um, it's a very happy ending to that movie. It did really well, and it deserved it 100%. Big fan. And that's it for now. I finished up a couple seconds before running out of running out of space on this camera on this phone. So happy about that. My voice is dying. I am gonna stop. Bye.